Inravio.com.
Hello again, everybody. This is Joe Larson, and you're watching the 5 Off, 5 On Racing Show. Deep into the holiday season here in our studios in New York, getting ready for the holidays. My holiday is Christmas, so Merry Christmas to those, even though it's 2 weeks away. And for the first time in my life, I'm done with my Christmas shopping like 2 weeks early. It's like Christmas is tomorrow, because I usually wait until like the day before or 2 days before. But anyway, not a lot going on in the world of racing, just a lot of news per se. But the biggest announcement, I guess, came when the NASCAR announced its 2017 schedule for the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour last week. And it was one of those things that a lot of folks in the social media were all upset and up in arms. Where's the schedule? Where's the schedule? Where's the schedule? And I was with that series for about 14 seasons, and it never came out before the banquet, never. So I don't know why people are getting all upset. But anyway, the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour schedule is out here, and the season will start on March 18th at the Myrtle Beach Speedway in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and end at the Thompson Motorsports Park in Connecticut with the traditional World Series of Auto Racing. Biggest change here, Thompson had always been the opener, the icebreaker, so to speak. And there's new ownership at the Thompson Motorsports Park. It was Don Honig and his family owned the facility for years and years and years, and he turned it over to his grandsons, who do things a little different. So maybe they aren't going to have what they call a traditional icebreaker, or they're accepting the fact that they're not the first race, because I know Don Honig was adamant that his was the first race. And now they'll be starting a little bit earlier at Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, one of the southern venues that the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour is going to visit. Thompson in Connecticut has 4 events. The Stafford Motor Speedway in Stafford Springs, Connecticut will have 3. The New London Waterford Speed Bowl will have 1 event. Riverhead Raceway, Long Island will have 2. Seekonk, Mass. and Oswego up in New York will have 1 each as well. The schedule also includes events at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in July and September, and also at the Bristol Motor Speedway in Tennessee in August. On the schedule, there is a non-points exhibition race at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in North Carolina, and that's scheduled for the beginning of October. But May 13th, an event is scheduled, and it just says to be announced. Now, normally NASCAR does not release a schedule until the schedule is totally completed, sanctioning agreements signed, and they're good to go. Well, this to be announced, a lot of folks are speculating it's going to be a southern track, and everybody's talking about Bowman Gray. Bowman Gray will not run a tour race. Caraway will not try to compete with Bowman Gray in the summertime, in May, considered summer. So it'll be interesting to see what that race is. Who knows? Maybe Martinsville, maybe a road course. NASCAR is a pretty tight-lipped on it, and efforts to get some inside scoop on that kind of went unanswered. Imagine that. But the schedule is out, so I thought with this new schedule, I really did think there will be additional races, especially with the I'll call it the merger with the Southern Modifieds into the Northern Modifieds. I don't want to say the elimination of the Southern Tour. And looking at this schedule, I don't see a lot of drivers and teams from the South, other than Hillbilly Racing, David Hill and his bunch, who've been running the Northern Tour since I can remember. I don't see a lot of teams coming up north for all these races. I also do not see any Northern teams going to Charlotte in the beginning of October for a non-points race unless it pays a lot of money. I don't know what they were thinking when they put a non-points race on the schedule so late in the year. So for the farthest place that they would have, well, Myrtle Beach is the furthest, but to go to Charlotte for a non-points race where the race technically means nothing. It's similar to when the tour a couple of years back went up to Delaware, Ontario, Canada for a tour race in September. The only drivers that showed were the drivers in the top 20 in points and anybody close enough with a shot to make the top 20 in points. If that event had been held in June, there would have been, in my opinion, a lot more drivers there. And Jay Slice hit the nail on the head. It's a bad schedule for the tour. I thought for sure there'd be 20 events minimum. I really did. I thought there'd be a South Boston, a Martinsville, Caraway in there in the mix. But I think one of the problems is with the Northern Tour, now the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, with the payoff structure that they have, it costs a lot of money to put on an event. And when I say a lot of money, and this is give or take a few $1,000s, I believe they have to put up, the track operators or the promoters, inwards of around $60,000 to put the race up that they have to send to NASCAR. And some of these places can't afford to do that. And I think that's another reason why the schedule is kind of limited. And when they're doing these events at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway and Bristol Motor Speedway, when you see events like that, it's on a cup weekend, and it's like a companion event, as it's called. So it'd be interesting to see how the to be announced race turns out, and also to see how many teams are going to take that trek down to Charlotte for a non-points race. I don't understand it. It's not like the non-points races on a Friday on a cup weekend where you call it an all-star race or something to that event, or an invitational. It's just a non-points race in Charlotte. And I would think it's going to be on the little go down pit road and go up on the tri-oval race that the Southern guys have traditionally done for years. I don't think they'll put the modifieds on the big track at Charlotte, although it would be a darn good race if you ask me, a darn good race. But that's what's going on with the schedule. Again, I'm surprised. I really thought, like I said, we'd be looking at 20 events and a little bit more in the South, like a Martinsville. So we'll see what happens. Anyway, speaking of NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, the banquet was held this weekend, and Doug Coby was crowned the 2016 NASCAR Wheel and Modified champion, getting all his hardware, his championship ring. And he joins an elite group of champions this past weekend. Doug Coby joined NASCAR's Hall of Fame Jerry Cook and Richie Evans, as well as NASCAR Hall of Fame nominees Mike Stefanik and Tony Hirschman Jr. as the only drivers in NASCAR Modified's 69-year history to win 4 or more championships. Who would have thought? Now, I remember when Doug Coby was on the scene running select races here, select races. I always wondered, why he's not running full-time for somebody. And it all comes down to dollars and cents, I'm sure, because to be a driver on the tour, you got to come to a team with money. It's not like the old days where your talent got you to ride. But, and I'd see Doug Coby run a few races here, run a few races there. I can remember when he was running the Seacon Grand Prix car. I had wondered why that didn't become more than what it was. Some opportunities along the way that just didn't materialize. He's doing well now, and 4 championships, 2 in a row. That's got to be good. That's got to be such a good feeling. And here's a guy, and he's not that old. Here's a guy 10 years from now, you're going to be talking about Hall of Fame credentials. And that's when you talk Jerry Cook, Richie Evans, Mike Stefanik, Tony Hirschman Jr., you're talking an elite group of drivers who have driven modifieds for years and years and years and years. Now, the 69-year history, of course, goes way back. It goes back to when the first division in NASCAR was called modifieds. Let's make that clear now. The NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour started as a touring series in 1985, when NASCAR decided that it was just easy to keep track of points if they just made one series. Because back then, I know I've said this before, back then, what they did was no matter what track you ran at, you got those points, and those points are reported to NASCAR, and it was I'm going to say it was an accounting nightmare for NASCAR to keep track of who's running where, as the race reports got sent in, and a lot of tracks would try to lure the Jerry Cooks or the Richie Evans, because the entry blanks, and I was a paper owner back in 79, 80, 81, the entry blanks would say, you know, $600 to Jerry Cook if he comes, $600 to Richie Evans if he comes. Of course, they were trying to get a headline. They were trying to get, hey, Richie Evans is here and Jerry Cook's there. And the old stories about Richie Evans and Jerry Cook upstate New York, where they'd send like a dummy truck and race car, you know, like it was going east. So they'd go west and they'd pull into the pits and the other guy would already be there. Some of the things that they did. And it was just, you know, back in that day, you know, they were all over the place. And then NASCAR, like I said, decided that they were going to go to one tour. And you know, in 22 figure eight, they say NASCAR's putting modifieds back to the early 60s and 70s. Not all drivers will be in the same events, especially with different series popping up. And that's correct. And I'm glad he brings that up, because there are so many modified series out there today, and we're going to talk about what caused that. Why are they not being included? Well, they're not being included because NASCAR is looking at NASCAR events only, NASCAR modifieds, not the ones that go by the name tour type, because they can't say, you know, Acme Corporation Tour Modifieds, because Tour Modified is that name is owned by NASCAR. If you do the research, you'll see that. Just like SK Modifieds is Stafford Motor Speedway in Connecticut, the home of the SK Modified. They invented SK Modifieds way back when, and no other series is supposed to use that term. They have to say SK type modifieds. And and Jay Slice says, some of the other tours are paying more money, absolutely, and the cost to race those events is less as well. So less to run it, more at the end. You gotta wonder why these tours have come to fruition, how this has happened. And I'm going to tell you how this has happened. And this, again, is my opinion. Part of it has to do with scheduling. Back when there were 26, 25, 28 races on a NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, whatever it was called back then, whether it was the Featherlight Tour or just the Modified Tour, teams didn't have time to go race other events, other series. They didn't have time because they were concentrated on the big picture, running almost every week or every 2 weeks, or 2 weeks in a row, a week off, 3 weeks in a row, a week off. And I had said this at a meeting way back, and I'm going to say in 2004, there was another series that was popping up and trying to take our cars. And we, at the time, on the Modified Tour, we had upwards of 45 to 50 cars. And I'm going to tell you, I think it was in 2003 or 4, we had 65 cars come to Long Island's Riverhead Raceway. We sent more cars home that day than that started the race, and a past champion didn't make the show, Jamie Tomeno. And what happens is, because the local guys have tour-type modifieds, all they had to do was buy the tour tires, pass inspection, pass pre-tech, and they were good to go. And who knows their local track better than a local guy? So they bumped out a lot of the tour guys, whatever, and I can remember that the difference between the pole and home, the guys who went home that didn't make show, was 0.2 of a second. That's how competitive the tour was back then. And what had happened is all these other series came to be because drivers and owners, they buy and build these cars to race them, not to sit home with them. And I know a lot of people say, well, there's family time, and there's this, you want to go on vacation. Absolutely, I don't disagree with that. But racers are racers. A true racer is going to go racing somewhere. And what had happened is some of the guys started racing somewhere, and they spent less money. There was less wrecks, I guess, because there was more accountability on the racetrack. There were more, maybe not more, it was, I'm going to say, better officiating. Didn't matter who you were. You got treated the same way. And sometimes that doesn't happen on a series that's old and kind of has some, I'll say, favorites. And that's why I think also in the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour, they need to shake up things every once in a while. You need to move race directors and series directors to other series to break it up, so you cannot build that relationship where, this guy has all the say. Like it used to be, there were a couple of teams that had all the say. And now it's a whole different ball of wax and a whole different group of people who have the say. Anyway, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more what went on in the Modified Tour Banquet, or the Touring Series Banquet, when we come back.
Hey, this is Chris Les Jake, and if Inravio.com spots you at an event wearing this bracelet, they will give you $100.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop, 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Welcome back. During the commercial breaks, I was just scanning through some of the things in the chat room, and Jay Slice, he gets in there right in the head here. NASCAR forgot that the modified touring drivers, they're working class guys. They're working guys. They want to go racing on the weekend. And to have their crews and their teams have to take off from work and lose money or save vacation days, however you want to look at it, to go to these 3, 4, 5 day events, NASCAR kind of missed, and somebody said earlier, missed the boat on this big time. And, and some of the rules that NASCAR has put in place, and I'll tell you what, I'll never argue a safety rule. I'll never argue a rule that's going to save somebody from getting hurt or worse. And that this should come at no cost. Whatever the cost is, you got to do it. If you have a $10 body, I guess then maybe you get $10 safety equipment. And, you can't put a price on safety because, you get injured bad, it's forever. If you get injured worse, that's your last day, and I hate to put it that way. And but some of the stuff that NASCAR has mandated for the modifieds over the last couple of years, I just feel it's lining somebody's pockets. The seat, that a very expensive seat because it has an SFI sticker, is that seat really that much better than the full containment seats that the teams have been using before that? I don't know. I didn't do the testing on it. I didn't see it. The Hans device. Yeah, I actually tested a Hans device where they put me in this sled with this thing, and they measured my neck and how far it moved, and without the device, and then use another one, and then how far it moved, and with the device, and then it was another one I tested where the straps actually, you could turn your head like this. With the conventional one, you're kind of limited. And I can remember sitting there, and you go down the sled and boom, you'd hit, 50 G's or whatever it was. And yeah, that was a good thing because, and I know I said this, and I know I upset somebody a couple of weeks ago because they said I told that story before. I'm going to tell another one that I probably told before. When I had that wreck in '96, strapped in my car, I could not reach the mirror to adjust it. I couldn't reach it. I had to unloosen, the shoulder harness and lean forward to adjust it. And I had to lean forward a lot. In the wreck, hitting the wall, my helmet hit that mirror. And the evidence of that was I had a red helmet, and my mirror frame with all the glass out of it was red with paint. And my helmet had the black from the frame of the mirror and speckles of glass in it. And that's a big stretch. I'm just thankful to God that when my head came back down, my neck went back into place. It came down straight, not like, unfortunately, Dale Earnhardt Sr.'s whose head turned when it came down and he had a basal skull fracture and it killed him. I'm okay with safety stuff. and the belt rule and this rule and that rule. I don't know about some of this stuff on window nets and shift the boots being 2 years. I do think with the seat belts, and I'm going to say this, and anybody out there that's involved with safety rules on the weekly tracks, I know, and Tracy Bethel is here, when somebody hits the wall at a great rate of speed and their belts lock them into the seat, if you undo the adjustment loops, you'll see that area where the metal was on the belt is burned. And if it happens a couple of times in the same spot, you could actually rip the belt like it's paper. Because once it's burned, it's the integrity of the strength of that belt is gone. And I think that any time somebody hits the wall with any great rate of speed, I should say, those belts should be re-inspected. And I'm just saying, just something to think about. Just something to think about. Anyway, back to the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour banquet. I got a little thing like I tend to do. Some of the other things, the big ticket awards that were handed out. Matt Swanson on the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour was named the Rookie of the Year. A young kid. He's got a future in racing. Let me tell you. Burt Myers and also was crowned the NASCAR Wheel and Southern Modified Tour champion in the Southern Tour's final season. It'll be interesting to see if Burt makes the trek up north to go racing or sticks to Bowman Gray, or there's another modified series down there that is still operating, contrary to some beliefs and some people telling me that it's out of business. I actually spoke to the series operator last week or the week before in regards to that. Just doing some chatting as to what's going on with that series. So congratulations to Burt Myers. Great guy, great family of racing. And Kyle Bonsignor, the cousin of Justin Bonsignor, who finished second in the points in the Wheel and Modified Tour. Kyle Bonsignor was named the Rookie of the Year in the Southern Modified Tour. The Bonsignors started all their racing in go-karts. And places like Bruno's on Long Island in their parking lot, the Jones Beach State Park parking lot, where we would get there at 6 o'clock in the morning and set up cones so we can go racing. And then, of course, their home at the Riverhead Raceway on Long Island. So congratulations to all the award winners at the Touring Series banquet, which was held in Charlotte, North Carolina. And congratulations to Doug again on championship number 4. Matt Swanson on his Rookie of the Year, as well as Kyle Bonsignor, and Burt Myers taking down a championship there in the Southern Tour. It's all good. I'll tell you what, that's a nice banquet. I've been to it many, many times, as you can imagine. And it's moved down to Charlotte in the last few years. It used to be up here in the north. And a lot of people are kind of upset with that because each series had their own little banquet. And the NASCAR Wheel and Modified Tour banquet was held at Mohegan Sun, and it wasn't such a little banquet. It would have over 600 people going. And because of the close proximity to where the venue was and where the teams came out of, it made sense. But in NASCAR's efforts to save money, it was easier for them to put on one production at one place all at the same time, because they're not paying anybody's way to go to these events, and other than the officials and those folks. But it's down in Charlotte. Hall of Fame is right there. It's all good, and it's working out. But unfortunately, the person or the people who support the series, due to time constraints, money constraints, taking off from work for 3 days or whatever it takes, they kind of miss out on that. And I saw a lot of that on the social media. No, I wish I could have gone, but I can't get to Charlotte. But and then 22 figure. Looking at the apparel, I got to tell you, there's rules for that on the touring series. If you're an award presenter or recipient, you're supposed to be dressed formal. Not everybody was dressed formal, but however, if you didn't have a tuxedo, you definitely had to have a suit. And otherwise, you didn't go on stage. That's how it was. And I looked at one picture, and I'm like the owner's picture, and you can go look at it and find it yourself. The one individual did not have a tie on, but he had a jacket and slacks and a button-down shirt. And he's one of those guys that I've seen at the racetrack. I've never seen him in anything other than messy blue jeans, because he's an owner and he works on the car hands-on, a T-shirt for the company that sponsors the car, and an old beat-up old hat. And I'm not going to say who it is, but to him that was formal, putting on a jacket, slacks, and a button-down shirt. So, but it was nice. It was nice, and even the officials have to get all dressed up. And I was a presenter a couple of times on stage for that, and I had a good time with that. I had presented an award to Art Barry and Bob Garbarino one time. I had presented a Most Improved Driver award. So you have to dress the part, and there's like believe it or not, a dress rehearsal. You have to go like in the morning, and you actually have a dress rehearsal because it is broadcast and all that kind of stuff. But there weren't any T-shirts and jeans, that were visible in Charlotte. So that's that. All right, let's see some stuff going on in NASCAR. There's a lot of stuff going on in NASCAR in the top series. And the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series driver, Chris Buescher, says he's really under contract with Roush Fenway Racing, but for the second consecutive season, Buescher will drive for a team other than Roush Fenway. The 24-year-old will compete full-time with a new second entry to be fielded by JTG Dougherty Racing. JTG had one full-time team with driver A.J. Allmendinger in 2016, and he was in the 47 car in 2016. Buescher, the 2015 Xfinity Series champion, spent this 2016 season driving the number 34 of Front Row Motorsports, winning at Pocono. So here's a situation where he's under contract for one team but running for another team. And that tells me that the teams are starting to, or have been working together to develop drivers, sharing information. It's not on purpose that, and I'm going to say it's like the big guys, the Hendricks, the Roushes, the Joe Gibbs, these guys, these teams here, when they made that rule that you can only own so many teams a few years back, now they start working together. So yeah, I got a driver. I got my full allotment of teams, so I got this guy. I'll pay his salary, let him run your car. It's kind of interesting where this Sprint Cup Series is going. It'll be interesting to see. And I know one of the things that they're looking at too big time in NASCAR is this substance abuse policy. Well, Stewart Haas Racing's Michael Casto, the crew chief for the 4-car of Kevin Harvick, who was suspended after the Cheez-It 355 at the Glen in August, Casto has been reinstated after completing NASCAR's Road to Recovery program. NASCAR takes care of those types of guys. And I know when I was working for a big corporation, all that employee had to do is say, I have a problem. If they want to deny, shake hands, there's the door. Admit there's a problem, they'll work with you. Multiple sources also say that NASCAR is cutting jobs, and many officials were given pink slips days before the banquet, the national banquet, and days after, immediately following the banquet. A former Sprint Cup Series official who asked me not to mention his name, who was one of the affected employees, was advised by NASCAR via telephone, we're restructuring, we don't need you anymore. Well, it's, think about this now. When I had worked the Sprint Cup Series event, and an Xfinity and Camping World Truck Series, and you're assigned a team that you're with for the whole weekend. And there were a lot of officials. Think about it. It was one for every car on pit road. There's a couple of garage officials. There's a couple of guys in charge of tires. There's this guy, there's that guy, there's the other guy, there's the spotters guy. And everybody had a job. And when it went for this, we're going to sit in a trailer now and watch pit road on TV, a lot of pit road officials kind of weren't needed anymore. So now what they did with these guys is you worked, and how do I put, when you look at their shirts, their official shirts, it has the top 3 albums somewhere on it. The Sprint Cup Series now, which is Monster Energy Drink, the Xfinity, and the Camp World Truck Series. Because you never knew where you were going to go, what track you were going to go at, what series you're going to work at that weekend. And this guy that I spoke to, who shall remain nameless, we had a little exchange, a conversation here in regards to this. This guy worked his way through the ranks, modifieds, K&N, truck, whatever, and he was a Sprint Cup guy. And I remember when he got the position, he posted in social media how when you love what you're doing, you'll never work a day in your life. And he was so proud to be a NASCAR official. He was so excited. And I know any time he went or arrived at a racetrack for the first time that weekend, he took some pictures of the sign on the wall and some pictures throughout the day and posted them on social media. Because he was proud. He was proud to do that. And he was one of these, he was an intelligent guy. He knew his stuff. And to get a phone call, not even, they tell you at the last event. No, they're going to tell you right before the banquet or right after the banquet that you're no longer needed. And that's kind of sad. That's, and somebody was saying that, like 22 figure eight says, when you look at the self-checkouts in some of the stores, it gets rid of cashiers. And technology are now getting rid of officials. And yes, to the technology, there's less people needed, but I really think that NASCAR is tightening its belt, and they're looking at, think about it, and I don't know what everybody, because I thought we all made the same until I found out we didn't, that everybody, whatever deal you were on when you came in, and I was on a whole different deal than people that were on the tour for years and years and years, and that kind of caused some negativity. I came in as the race director. Race directors got paid very well. Hauler drivers get paid very well. Just regular old inspectors don't. And again, that's a relative term. But, it wasn't how I fed my family. It wasn't how I made a living. But when you're full-time on a series where you're not just going from Daytona Speed Weeks to Homestead, you're there for testing, you're there for all kinds of stuff, and every week you're somewhere else. You're going there Wednesday or Thursday, and you're not getting home till Monday. And I think that it has to do with cost savings. They're trying to cut some of the costs and expenses to run their business. And they're taking a look at it. Do we really need 80 officials at an event in the top series? No, we don't. Let's see where we can cut. So I just, as a person, that could have been done like at the last event, or have a meeting with everybody and say, listen, if I call your name, go to the left side. If I don't call your name, go to the right side. Okay, everybody on the left side, get back to work. Everybody on the right side, thanks for your service. I don't know. There's no good way to get rid of people. Anyway, we're going to take a break, and we come back. We're going to talk about a crew member who has been suspended now indefinitely pending substance abuse when we come back.
Hi, my name is Aaron from Real Big Fish.
And I'm Ed from Real Big Fish.
And you're watching the Inravio TV network.
Hey, I'm Raul Panther.
And I'm Commander B. Hawkins.
And I'm Murphy Weller. We're some of the proto men. If we see you without this bracelet, you get punched in the But if you have this bracelet from Inravio.com, you can win $100.
Put one of these on, or else.
Village Music Shop of Mastic. 1-800-HEY-DUDE. Your full-service store with personalized attention, school band instrument rentals and sales, music instruction on all instruments for all styles and age groups, for guitars, drums, amplifiers, PA systems, and accessories. It's Village Music Shop. 1495 Montauk Highway in Mastic. Call 1-800-HEY-DUDE or go to villagemusicshop.com.
Hey, welcome back. Yeah, NASCAR recently suspended Ryan Hess for his third violation of substance abuse, according to NBC Sports. Hess, who worked with BK Racing in 2016, was first suspended in August of 2012, while at McDonald Motorsports in the Xfinity Series, reinstated in December of 2012, and a second suspension occurred in June 2013 with a reinstatement of March of 2014. Ryan has 3 shots at this. This is an indefinite suspension, and I'll tell you what, there's a lot of this going on. When I say a lot of this, not a lot of suspensions, but a lot of NASCAR testing, not only the officials, but crew members. Anybody that holds a NASCAR license is subject to a drug and alcohol test. And the substance abuse thing, this is big. Now, you got to understand that, coming down pit road, cars are coming in all kinds, even though pit road speed is 55 miles an hour, which sounds slow after you go 180, but it's like standing on the freeway and having that car stop on the shoulder so you could change that, but there's 43 of them. You got to be on your game. And when you see and hear stuff like this, you got to say to NASCAR, thank you. And hopefully this person gets it right. This person goes through the program again and can prove that he's better this time. But, this is the third shot for this guy. This is the third shot. So I hope he works out his problems. I hope he gets those demons off his back. Everybody that's close to me knows my feeling on substance abuse. And you know what? Get it fixed, big guy. Get it fixed. And I hope and pray that it works out for you. Anyway, what's going on? Dale Earnhardt Jr. has received a medical clearance to return to racing, as announced by Hendrick Motorsports last week. Earnhardt, who is 42, it's hard to believe he's 42, missed the final 18 events of the 2016 season after suffering yet another concussion. Earnhardt took an on-track testing session at the Darlington Raceway in Darlington, South Carolina, under the supervision of Charlotte neurosurgeon Dr. Jerry Petty. Earnhardt was cleared by Dr. Mickey Collins, medical director of the UPMC Sports Medical Concussion Program in Pittsburgh. Collins, who consulted with Dr. Petty following last week's track activity, both agreed that Dale Earnhardt Jr. is ready to go. Earnhardt completed 185 laps over a 5-hour period. If you could do 185 laps over a 5-hour period and not have any ill effects of the concussion or anything else, you're good to go in my book too. I don't have to be a neurosurgeon to know that. But he did well. The lap times were good, and he didn't suffer the ill effects of what he was suffering towards the end of his racing in 2016. So hopefully that's all good. My only concern with this, and just from other sports, Pat LaFontaine in hockey, Wayne Corbett in football, LaFontaine playing for the Islanders and Corbett playing for the New York Jets. Another shot to the head, you're back to square one. And that post-concussion syndrome is not good. Your brain is encapsulated in your skull, and it's not in there tightly. There's space, and you take that hit, and I just hope that it all works out for Dale Earnhardt Jr. This is what he does for a living. This is his business. This is all he knows. He's grown up in racing. I mean, yeah, he has successful businesses with the race teams and in a couple of the different series and some other venues going on as well, but this is what you do. If anybody watched that movie, Grease Lightning, with Richard Pryor, after he had that, as Wendell Scott, and he had that big bad wreck, and he was in the hospital for all that time and walked with a cane now, and when he decided he was going to go back racing, one of the other competitors says, why do you push yourself hard? And he goes, because that's all I know. And you know what? That's what he does. He's a racer. And Dale Earnhardt Jr. is a racer, and hopefully he'll go back to the levels he was before his injuries and be injury-free for the rest of his career. And speaking of BK Racing earlier, BK Racing will have a significant overhaul to its driver lineup for 2017. Primary driver David Reagan and Matt DiBenedetto will not return to the team in 2017. DiBenedetto announced on Twitter, "I've decided to go in a different direction next year. It's been a great ride. Thank you." DiBenedetto has 60 starts with one top 10 finish, a sixth place run at Bristol. Reagan's contract expired at the end of the 2016 season, and BK chose not to renew it. There's a lot going on in racing, a lot going on. People moving and unmoving and all kinds of good stuff. And while I'm thinking of people, I want to send out a get well wish to John Visconti, who was a guest on our show a couple of weeks ago. Just this past Friday, he had knee surgery to correct some damage in his knee. So I want to wish him well, a speedy recovery. John Visconti, a modified owner, not only the local racetrack here in Long Island, but also will be putting his toes in the Whelen Modified Tour Series as well, dipping his toes in the water there. So get well wishes to John Visconti. If you see him on Facebook or friends on Facebook, just wish him a little good luck in his speedy recovery. Him and I exchanged some words in regards to it. And for those, I had 7 knee surgeries in my lifetime. The last one was an ACL repair. And the next one after this will be a replacement. So I know all about knee surgeries, trust me. And the worst part of it, and I'm sure there's people out here listening and watching and chatting, have also experienced that as well. The hardest part is right after the surgery. But after that, you're good to go. You're good to go. Speaking of good to go, Eric Rudolph, former modified competitor, now running TQs, won the Battle of Trenton, an indoor TQ race this past weekend at Trenton, New Jersey. If you've never seen an indoor TQ race, the end of January in Atlantic City on Boardwalk Hall, the TQs, along with the slingshots and champ carts, will be putting on a show that weekend. And I'll tell you what, I've been going to those races on and off since 1977. Long time ago. Yep, I'm old. Nobody has to say it. And the racing there indoors, I mean, a lot of equipment gets tore up, don't get me wrong. But the racing there, you want to see race. That's where you're separating the men from the boys on this indoor racing. And Eric Rudolph, you know, when he came onto the modified tour, he was a little quiet, a little timid. But, you know, he let his car do his talking for him. And then he went local racing. He went racing dirt upstate and running TQs. This guy has driven just about everything there is to do in race cars. And I'll tell you what, it's interesting to see what's going to happen in Atlantic City with the likes of, you know, Ted Christopher and Joey Page and some of those guys banging wheels together. Because I'll tell you, it's an aggressive bump and bang and beat type of an event. And where it's tough to make the show, a lot of cars show up. And even if you make the show, sometimes you wish you didn't. But congratulations to Eric Rudolph on that victory there. We'll see what happens in Atlantic City. And also Daytona International Speedway announced a multi-year partnership with the University of Northwest Ohio, also known as UNOH, for the school to secure naming rights to the fan zone. The fan zone, a 211,000 square foot entertainment hub in the infield of the World Center of Speed, or the World Center of Racing, Daytona International Speedway. UNOH in Lima, Ohio, invented the first high-performance motorsports degree program in the country, and in 2006 opened the largest United States facility dedicated to learning the science of high-performance vehicles. Todd Zegedy on the NASCAR Whelen Modified Tour was lucky enough to have them as a sponsor when they first came on board. Then they started sponsoring races and events, and now they're in it with both feet, and they have the naming rights to the fan zone at Daytona. If you've never been to that, it's like a carnival atmosphere. It's pretty awesome. And, you know, and I was talking to one of the, I guess, managers or whatever, or people in the know at the UNOH a couple of years ago at Daytona. And I was talking, I said, because, you know, this sponsorship thing, the return on the sponsorship dollar. Here's a school that's kind of fairly new at this degree program. And they're putting tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars now into auto racing, into NASCAR. And I said to him, I said, what do you stand to gain from this? Because there's a game, and I called it a WIFM when I was in sales years ago, the WIFM, what's in it for me? It's an acronym. What's in it for UNOH to sponsor a team? They get the people who apply to your school, they get their name on it. He goes, well, that's part of it. He goes, but our tuition is very high, and there aren't a lot of scholarships. So, like when they were sponsoring Todd Zegedy, they said if 2 people applied to the school because they saw it on Todd's car, they broke even. Think about that. And they gave Todd Zegedy and the 2 team, Mike Samorgio, a lot of money to go racing, to promote that. Then they started promoting the Battle of the Beach, UNOH, Battle of the Beach, that modified late model race at Daytona on the backstretch. And if you go to some of the events now, the top series, the Sprint Cup, Xfinity, and Campbell now, wow, I keep saying that, Monster energy drink series, I guess they're going to call it. If you go to them, the UNOH has a presence. They have a big trailer, big booth, just like all the other vendors trying to sell their stuff, like Ford, Chevy, all the big ones, Xfinity. They're all there. They have a thing in the Midway. And they're trying to get people to come to their school. They're trying to create an awareness. And sometimes that's what you need to do. Create the awareness, because without the awareness, nobody knows you're even out there. And here's a college that not only invented a degree program for high performance racing, but they've come to NASCAR, and now they've come to other series as well to promote their school, to recruit students, to teach them high performance, to teach them what it's like to build an engine, prepare a race car. Where else can you go and get that? See, a lot of us up till now, we learned that in our friend's driveway, in a garage somewhere, through experience, through somebody showing us when we messed up. I can remember one time doing something to my race car, and someone says, why would you do that? Dude, that was the worst thing you could do. Let's undo it. I didn't know. There were no, back in the 70s, you couldn't go on the internet and look stuff up. You just did it, And there was an old saying, and my good buddy Bill Stockett had said back then, when Chris Young, the late Chris Young, was driving a figure 8 car, and he was winning like crazy. He won every qualifying event in the figure 8s, and he won a championship in the figure 8s. And Bill Stockett said to me, if I saw Chris Young pouring sand into his carburetor, I would do it too, because it's working for him. We're going to take a quick break, and we come back, we'll start wrapping up.
Hi there, this is Buddy from Less Than Jake, and you are listening to Inravio TV. You're probably watching it too.
world of advertising has changed. Radio, TV, and newspaper revenues have declined drastically. Why? Because businesses have realized that advertising return on investment isn't what it used to be. So what can we do about it? Well, that's easy. Advertise online. Own a local restaurant, real estate agency, or even a national retail chain? Whatever your business, Inravio can get your message out there, and we can do it at a fraction of the cost. Call today and see the difference for yourself. This isn't TV. This isn't radio. This is Inravio.com.
Hey, welcome back. Looking at Jay Slicer, you crack me up. It's funny, some of the stuff that we would do over the years racing. And I was kind of clueless to some of this, and and still to this day, I'm not an engine guy. I'll be the first one to tell you. But I can remember I had a motor, and the motor was a little bit big. And how do you put it? The word in my little circle was, and I laugh when I say this, don't worry, they're not going to check you because you don't run up front. And one of the things that we did was, like I said, it was a little big when you did the puffer test to get your cubic inches. And the late Luigi Terrapicchio comes up to me, he goes, in his broken English, I'm not even going to try it. He said, just throw 4 or 5 cigarette filters down each spark plug hole. I said, Louis, what's that going to do? Well, when they puff your motor, it's got to be cold, right? I said, yeah. So that's going to take up space. So you're going to come right in if you put a bunch in each one. I said, yeah, but it's going to clog up everything. He goes, no, a cigarette filter. And he took a match, he lit it, just disintegrated. He goes, once the piston fires, it's going to blow out the exhaust. It's going to melt and blow out the exhaust. So, if you have a big motor, you can do that. Well, I kind of remember that over the years, and when I became an official, we would, be able to check things out a little more thoroughly. And Jay Slice says, yeah, that works. It's some of the things that we did, and I think that's why they maybe a tech guy on the tour for some of the things that I knew under the old regime, because I knew a lot of this stuff. And I can remember, we had a 45-inch height rule that you couldn't be lower than that. And so I was sitting there measuring my car, and it's like, it's 43. I'm 2 inches too low. And I'm like, what do I do? I don't know how. I'm not going to start changing springs and stuff, because at the time I didn't know how. I'm like, what am I going to do? So, one of the guys that was helping me, he said to me, oh, this is what we're going to do. And he goes, they're going to set the thing up probably right here in tech. So we're going to push over there really. We're going to jack the car up and put charcoal briquettes in your springs. Because I had coil springs. And it made the car higher. And all of a sudden I'm looking and I'm like, oh man, they're setting it up at the bottom of the ramp where you enter the racetrack. And I saw that anybody that didn't make it, they just sent them back around. Like you didn't go out to qualify, you didn't go out in your heat race, you had to go out in the concert. And so they told me to just go easy, don't gun it, kind of just coast. And when they're going to stop you, stop easy. So I do, and I go under the thing, and it was like a little thing that hung, and your roof as it went by it would have to brush it. If it didn't hit it, you were too low. And then they said, just when you get on the racetrack, just gun it and hit the brakes, and the charcoal bricks will break. And now it never did make any advantage to that, because I never won because of it, but. And that's another thing, Jay Slice, you leave the head bolts loose. But I'm going to start telling secrets here. But, and the other thing is when you have this front and rear percentage thing, and, I had to wait on a slider because my car was so loose, and I had to have this weight, but, so it was on a slider, so I was able to slam on the brakes, so it would go forward, and then I just hit this thing in the chassis rail, and it would stop it from sliding again. And then when the race was over, I was able to lift that thing up, and then I would gun it, and it would slide back to where it had to go. Just some of the things that we did back in the day, to get through things. And there's a whole lot. I know Jay Slice has some tricks. He's not going to talk about them, but and I'm sure 22 Figure 8 goes over there in the main garage. I'm not saying they played games with the rules, but they played games within the rules. to make it for their advantage. And quick story there. I remember Roger Maynard, he is the winningest figure eight driver, not only on Long Island, but probably in the United States. He was running an old 37 coupe. And the rules there, and there was a protest, it was a whole big thing. I suspended the guy for like 10 years, but NASCAR made it 2 weeks. And the rule there was wheelbase had to be minimum of 105. So if the body style you were using was shorter than 105, you had to make it 105. Or it had to be stock wheelbase. So a guy comes up to me and goes, I'm going to protest the wheelbase. I said, based on what? So they got the old specs from a 37 Ford, and it said the wheelbase was like 112. And I'm like, oh, okay. So they measured the wheelbase on the 37 Coupe race car, and it's 105. Technically, it's illegal. So you got to take a champion down. I can't just do that. I have to talk to the promoters, the tech guy and myself. I put our heads together, and we were told to let it go. And caused a lot of grief in the pit area. They said, let it go. He's been racing for 1.5 years with that car. And I was against that, and I knew I was going to take all the heat for it, and that's not why I was against the decision, because the decision was not right. It was wrong. The wheelbase was wrong, and it needed to come down. But the car owner was pumping a lot of money into the racetrack, and you guessed it. You got to do what you got to do. It's stuff like that when you look at, and here's what where I'm getting at. I was never big on breaking people's shoes about certain things when I was in that position. Even when I was on the tour, hey, listen, it's not a competitive advantage. It's not a safety issue. Get it fixed for next time. Now, the guy that might have taken over my spot after that, he might not have said that. He might have made them change it that day, or maybe not at all. You can't run. But when you look at those things, and hey, listen, if the bumper height's 14 inches to dead center and this guy's at 16, is that a competitive advantage? Is it a safety advantage? I can remember having an issue with the officials at my local track when I owned a blunderbuss car. The rules stated the rear bumper had to be mounted in stock position. Well, mine was, but nobody else's was. So every time they got knocked into the back of the car, it lifted the rear wheels off the ground. So I'm complaining, and they told me, well, just get your bumper down. Well, then I'm violating that rule. It's just so many things. And yes, it was 22. That was the Doc's car, and George Brown ran it before Roger did, and and George Brown was one of the fair-headed boys back in the day. So they let it go. But it's tough with the rules. And Tracy and up at now Evans Mills Speedway, upstate New York, she's in the midst of writing rules, and there's so many things that you have to be like a lawyer to write these rules today, and it's the rule book's got to be thick, and and you got to be specific. You cannot do this, because I've had competitors, crew chiefs, owners go, well, the rules don't say I can't do that, and I would say to them, well, show me where it says you can, and then you have an addendum. You got to make something for that rule, and that's the team's job, I guess, is to push that envelope, and it's the rule writers and the tech people and the promoters and all the officials to seal that envelope, to clear that up. And when you look at that, when you look at rules, and like I said last week, I've looked at rules where it says on page 17, you must do this. And then you go to page 29 and says you can never do that. And it contradicts that rule, because whoever's doing the rule changes is not editing the rule book. So what are you going to do? It's just one of those things. And 24 lines on a page, and I see 48. You got it. Anyway, we're going to wrap this up now. I just want to let everybody know I'm headed to Charlotte. My cousin Fred Kraft is getting married. I'll be down with friends and family to celebrate his wedding, and also take some nice, quiet leisure time to enjoy, decompress, and have some fun. And congratulate Freddie on his wedding, if you get to talk to him on social media, and his future wife, Megan. who's been around racing and puts up with Fred. So I want to God bless them both and wish them well on their marriage. Everybody else, wherever your endeavors are going to bring you this week, please be safe. Please be careful. Tell somebody you love them. Give them a hug. God bless you all. We'll see you next Monday. Good night, everybody.